I'm with ZDoggMD, Dr. Zubin Damania. I'm really excited to talk to you. You're a fellow locals creator, and I want to talk to you about locals. You come up constantly in my community, particularly there. I do workouts with, we call them Sarah Connor workouts. We've been doing them since the middle of the pandemic, and it's just women. And one of the women in there has been begging for us to have a conversation. She's like, you have to have him on your podcast. And she's a member of your community as well, and was rocking your t-shirt in our workout. So
people in my group have been shouting you out too. They're like, you guys got to get together. And I'm like, well, hey, they call it locals. We're all locals. Let's hang out. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, so tell me, how is your community going? What are you finding exceptional about the experience on locals?
Yeah, the main thing is that it doesn't have that Facebook nasty, like hateful, let me show you how cool I am and how much you suck vibe, you know? So it seems like if you set the right tone, and, you know, we're creating a little bit of a bubble, right? Because it's people who have like mindsets to some degree with us. So you always have to be mindful of the echo chamber effect. But what I found is like, it's a great place where people actually, they're politically quite different. They have different ideas from each other, but they share them in a way that's so respectful, and they promote dialogue. They support each other. There's like a regular cast of characters that are like super users that kind of run the show. And I'm just like, I'm a bystander in many ways. So it's really nice to have that community have its own energy, you know? And if I contrast it to say like Facebook, where I have a big supporter group, right? Bigger than locals, but if you let them go on a discussion group, they tear each other to shreds. It becomes, and they're all trying to rat each other out. Like, he said something political to me. It's like on locals, it's like, no, we're all grown-ups. We scroll by if we don't like something, you know?
Yeah, there is that vibe. I've been trying to figure out what's different about something like Facebook. And it is that their people just tend to be more respectful, because we call it the fam in my community.
I love it.
And with the PH, and they really have embraced that sense of family. And we're like, so there was a week where things were getting kind of heated, and I generally just stepped back and I was like, okay, we just need to remind everyone of the number one rule in my community, which is don't be a dick. I'm like, that's just, I feel like from there we can kind of build, and it's still personalities interacting, but there is a definite sense of community that I don't have anywhere. My biggest platform is Twitter, and I mean, you know what Twitter is like. It's the Thunderdome.
Gives me chest pain just when you say the T word. Yeah,
exactly. You put your armor on before you log in, and I don't feel that. And what is different about what you're promoting or pushing, or content that you're putting behind your paywall? And I always call it my gated community. What are you putting there that's different than what you're putting it publicly?
Yeah. I love the way you described that, because the experience of the community, it's like, you just don't be a dick in a no dick zone. This is a no dick zone, that's it. And people generally do that. It's really lovely. So in terms of content, I find locals is a place where the BS meter is so high. They're looking for authentic you, and they're there because something in your particular creator vibe, jazzes them up, and they feel a kinship. And that's what they'll say. You called it a family. It is. It's like this community family kind of thing. It's the fam. Yeah. I gotta steal that, but the PH won't work for me. And ZH sounds like some kind of dictator. So I have to work on that. But yeah, so I just put very honest, authentic, live content, early stuff, articles. So what I use the community for is, like, say I find a piece on COVID that I'm like, oh, this changed my thinking in some way and challenged some things I've been saying. Rather than just sharing it randomly somewhere, I share it on locals, and I say, hey guys, like, this thing really kind of challenged my thinking. What do you guys think? Weigh in. And I get 300 comments that are so high level. You're just like, oh, and then it informs me. Then I go and do a public video going, hey, this is my thinking on this now. So it's actually a way of actually improving your content too, and your thinking.
I love that. I I definitely use my community as an incubator to kind of really flesh out some of my column ideas, for example, or I'll even ask the community, like, hey, what do you want to, what have we been talking about or you've been thinking about that you want to hear? And so they do have that first look, but they also have the ability to influence what is coming out and being promoted publicly. We post on Dumpster Fire. We'll post the unedited Dumpster Fire the day before we post the edited version, and we get it up really early on Sunday mornings. And I often, almost every week, someone will call me out on something that was wrong because we don't fact check it in real time. And so it gives me the ability to fact check the edited version. They'll make a point that I wish I had made. They'll suggest an edit. So they're in some ways I'm crowdsourcing the final version, and that's so cool, but they feel like they have a part of it.
Oh, I love it. That's kind of what I'm doing too. It's kind of like, okay, if they go through, like, my thinking on this piece is this way, then I read the comments and I'm like, I never even thought of that. Or, oh, you know what? I was wrong. Actually, when you really drill in, this is how a lot of people feel. I address that. So it's really a tremendous thing. Have you done any live stuff yet?
We did. I just did a live stream last night, actually, because speaking of the fam, I might get emotional if I talk about this, but we had a super user pass away, like, randomly. And he was, it's weird because it's virtual. And you don't know, I never met him in real life, although many of my community have started doing little Phetasy meetups all over America. So they've gone to concerts together, and his last post was that he was trying to make it to the New York meetup, but he was sick. And then he ended up in the hospital, and we had this other super user who tracked him down and checked on him and kind of was giving us updates. And then another woman in my Sarah Connor group, she said, I was Googling to see if we knew anything, and they found his obituary. So I had to tell everybody yesterday, and it hit everybody so hard, and it gave me that. I was like, wow, this is something so different. It's like this island of misfit toys, and they've established these relationships, and they're authentic. People really feel like they can be their authentic self. And I think part of that is the safety of a paywall. It makes them feel, somewhat safe, even it's a falser sense of, I don't think any of us are safe virtually, but they feel that sense of family. And so we had a live stream where I just was like, hey, let's do a little memorial for him on Friday, a Zoom memorial, so people could, and now one of the girls reached out to his family, and the family is coming to the memorial, our memorial that we're doing for him. So
wow.
It's turned into, it's really, it's humbling to me that this has sprung up out of this community that, it's weird when you create something and then it takes on this life of its own that you never could have imagined.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's it. You kind of put your finger right on it. It's this weird organism that arises that you kind of seed it, but kind of like a parent almost, but then it's its own thing, and it's beautiful, and it's forming its own connections, and people's lives are actually changed for the better because of the connections they make, which was the promise of social media in the beginning. And then you run smack right up into the financial incentives of social media to get clicks and ads and so on. So then the polarization happens. What you mentioned about the paywall, it's a kind of a feeling of a security blanket, but I think there's an unconscious understanding, and I'm thinking about this for the first time. There's an unconscious understanding that this place is motivated differently. Like, he's not here to put clickbait up, and people aren't here to get attention. We're here to actually connect with other people and form relationships. It's relational. And that's very different. And I think the structure of it, the finances of it, where it's like, oh, they're paying a creator, and the creator is the center of the universe for the company. Locals, like Locals, is not talking about advertisers. They're not talking about all this other stuff. It's like, no, this all we care about is creators. It changes the entire dynamic. It's living up to the promise of what social media was going to be. The story about your fan, and man, I know there's some super fans on my page. If anything ever happened to them, I don't know what I would do, right?
Yeah.
Because you become that close.
Yeah, and it's such a it is like a little sanctuary that I know I can retreat to, especially particularly I think when you're out there taking hits publicly. You'll have your
Yeah.
real life obviously and your real life relationships, which are very important to have when you're front facing in a culture war. But you and I think you and I, from what I've heard and what I understand and what I've gathered from seeing some of your stuff, is we're very similar in that we kind of found ourselves like caught in the crossfire of the culture war. my
Yeah.
my refrain is like, I never wanted any of this. I
Yeah.
moved out here to be like an actress and a comedian, and now I'm talking about things that I don't. I just like stumbled into the culture war.
Yeah.
And the thing about some of the other creator sites that I'd experienced before I really just abandoned everything and put all of my eggs in locals was that it was very me centric. And I love locals because it's we centric. It just feels, it's not just me putting up stuff about me, it's me engaging with those people who appreciate what I'm doing. And also they're all so creative in their own right, and they're putting up their own content, and they always are like, do you care if I put posts, my promote your stuff? I want you all to be creatives. That's like our birthright as humans, is to be creative. That I want to encourage and foster a community that's creating.
Oh man, I love the way you talk about this. You really you're putting into words things that I feel unconsciously about the community, but I haven't been able to articulate. The idea of a we space, right? The idea that they're making content, and not only that, but they're getting my attention with the content as somebody who does this. Like I'll go, wait, that's a video right there. Like I never would have thought of that. Like that's great. And you mentioned something earlier too, where it's kind of a sanctuary in a way for us as creators. Oh, I feel that like right here. Like I'll have a bad day or something will happen, or getting some spat on Twitter, which is a waste of time. And then and then you come back to the group. I'll hit live on the thing. I'll sit right here in the studio. I'm like, hey guys, I'm having a crappy day. Like this is what's going on. And these are, and they'll start, interacting with each other in the chat, but then also, telling me, oh, but you just tell them this and that. And what'll happen is it'll get me to, I had a guest on my show who called it tea kettling, where you just blow your top. You just release emotion that you've been repressing. And I'll do it with them. I'll be like, these fucking, I can't even believe it. Let me tell you what I really think. And you can just see in the comments, just the support, like you are validated. It's cool. We may not even agree with what you're saying. You're out of your mind. You want to punch a dolphin in the face. Like, who are you? I'm like, sometimes I just want to hit a dolphin. And they'll provide support. And so I think they get something out of that too, right? It's like this really wee kind of phenomenon. But for me, it's been great.
Yeah, it feels like my base camp. If I was like out there fighting a war, I'm like, okay, I'm returning back to my little base camp where there's food and shelter, and just some of the things that I love about being locals being so creator focused. I think and spend a lot of time thinking about creativity and how that manifests. And I see this even just in the little ways. We did Phetasy summer camp for the summer, and I was like, try not to spend as much time online as you do, and let's do some things in the world, plant something, build something, paint something. And then everybody was posting their Phetasy summer camp activities. And another thing that people are always posting is food. And there's just so many amazing bakers and foodies in my community. They're so talented. And sometimes I'll just be having a day where I feel blah, or I'll be like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And then I go into my locals community and I'm reminded, this is why I'm doing this. I started doing all of this. I started my company Phetasy in 2005 because I wanted to connect to people. That is why that's why I went on social media. And I'll forget that. You start chasing other things. And for me, locals and the creator groups are, because of the way it's structured and focused, it always reminds me of that primary purpose.
Creation, the
and
act of brings connection, creation, bringing something new into the world, and then sharing it.
Yeah.
Hey, I a while ago I took this one of these lame online personality tests, and it was called the Sparketype, and it was supposed to test your aptitude in career. In other words, what's your primary sort of, they call it a Sparketype, like what drives you, and then what's your secondary type that feeds into the first. And there's like 10 of them, right? There's there's the entertainer, and there's the leader, and there's the nurturer. The top one was sage, which basically fancy way of saying teacher, and the subtype was maker, which is fancy way of saying creator. And it finally made me realize, yeah, I create videos, I create on social media, I do all of this so that I can connect by teaching. That's my prime circle of motivation. And with locals, it's like, wow, this is perfect. Not only do you get to create content, but you get to learn from other people's creations, and it becomes this community of creativity, connection, education, teaching, everything that I'm passionate about. So they've done something remarkable. And I think it started with just simply setting a tone, making the financial thing actually support what they're trying to do.
Right.
I think that's so important, because incentives, like in medicine, if you're paid to do stuff to people, you're going to do stuff to people. That's
right.
Whether it works or not, you're going to believe that it works. You're going to make yourself believe it works. And so a lot of what we do doesn't work, but it generates revenue. So we've done it. So if the prime financial directive is wrong, nothing else can work right, because humans will operate on these incentives. So if you start with the right incentive, then humanity actually comes out in a way that you actually want it to.
Yeah. I also love the design. I've, again, seen other creator sites, although I haven't seen anything really like Locals. I remember when I first saw the design, I was just so blown away by how gorgeous it is, and simple and user friendly. And it does. I love scrolling down my feed. It gives me so much joy, and so many other people in the creator space, because we live in a very strange time. The idea of being a creator has been around obviously forever. And this idea of having people who support your work, I mean, we can go back to the Renaissance even. People have always been paid to be artists and creators. But it's a strange time to just be making videos, and it's a whole new world. Sometimes I'm like, we're just having conversations, and this is what we're doing.
How many times? So on a live stream, I'll do some crazy stuff, whether it's dumb karaoke with just terrible or whatever it is. And someone will chime in and say, this is what I pay the monthly fee for, like right here. And I'll be like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done. Like, but they're like, no, it's for the authentic moment. Well, whatever you're being you in the present moment, which that's the magic, is you're really opening a hole in the universe and letting this creative thing come through. That's how it feels. You're just getting out of the way. And that's why I think, sometimes it's nice to just go live. And sometimes it's nice to do something that's pre-recorded and mix it up, because whatever just feels authentic at that time. And that's another reason, like, I think with Locals, they don't expect me to schedule something. They don't expect me to go live at a certain time. They're like, no, he's going to do what he's going to do when he does it. And if we're here, great. And they're very forgiving about that.
Do you go live when you're just out in the world, or is it pretty structured in for instance, like do you have your nice setup, or are you cool with just being live out in the universe?
Yeah, it's a mix. The stuff where we're live, like in my backyard or out in the universe or something, it always seems to get more engagement, because people want to see you, like it's like seeing somebody in a zoo, an animal in a zoo, versus seeing them tear the head off like an antelope. So it's a kind of a mix of those things. What I have found is there's like your background looks beautiful, right? It's so well composed and framed. Your sound is good. You have a great mic. You look great.
I mean, it all needs work, but thank you.
Hey, join the club, right? And mine, we've spent some time really, kind of chiseling it out. That's great. But people are suspicious of levels of production like that, because their BS meter is quite high. So they're like, oh, is this going to be another, talking head that's going to talk nonsense? But within a few minutes of a show, they realize, no, it's quite authentic. So it's less about, I think, the production than are you really authentically being you, Now, sometimes I'll just stop and stare at the camera and won't make a sound for 30 seconds because I'm channeling what it feels like to be super present. And
Mm.
some people will tune out and be like, he's lost his mind. And other people will be like, whatever you just did, I felt it. And everything, time kind of stops and you're just there. And it's like moments like that that you can't plan, you don't rehearse them. They have to be authentic. And I think this platform, it doesn't just encourage it, it kind of thrives on it. It's like the lifeblood of it, you know?
Yeah. Every community is different. Our another mutual creator, Michael Malice, he's very funny. Likens me to a baby goat in a petting zoo. Like my relationship with I don't even like calling them fans because I don't
Yeah.
feel like there's that dynamic. They're fam, really. But my relationship with them is I'm so comfortable, just being me, and I don't feel any kind of level, and that's the thing I love about locals too, is that I constantly am like, I'm just one of you guys. We're all the same here.
Yeah.
And he fosters, I think, a different kind of vibe, but that's authentic to who he is, so you can really create the world you want to inhabit in your space.
And that's right. And make the family there, like we call ours the Z-Pack supporter tribe, or the
I
Z-Pack.
love that.
Yeah. And I'm waiting for Pfizer to sue me for use of the word Z-Pack, but whatever. It's PAC, Pfizer. It's like Tupac. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
But but you're right. Like even looking at the breadth of the creators on locals, each one has a very different vibe, right? You may not fit in a particular tribe, but that tribe they are down with that group, and that's great. The thing we always have to be cognizant of is, are we forming a echo chamber?
Right.
So I'm always telling people like, well, okay, so let's see where our blind spots are, what we're missing, because that's our vibe. It may be that there's a vibe where it's like, no, this is our echo chamber. This is the only place where we can really be us, and let those echoes bounce around, because out in the world we're treated like crap, or we're called whatever, these terrible names. Here we can be us, and I think that's important, right? And I have yet to see. I can count on one hand the people that I've had to talk to or message or even block in rare cases for being out of their minds. And it's usually people who've come over from Facebook thinking, oh, this is another place I can be a dick.
Right.
And quickly realize that they can't.
Right. I mean, the antibodies in my community are pretty strong. I've noticed that if somebody is behaving that way, they won't get attacked, but there will definitely be pushback like, hey, this is not that place.
Isn't that interesting? That's mine too. Same thing.
Yeah, there's a kind of anti-pylon, people. And it's been so, like what you said about how this was the original promise of the internet. I have never thought about that, but it has been so refreshing. My husband was so skeptical about what the community would be. He says all the time, he says, you have absolutely proven me wrong in what you've created on locals, because I thought it was just going to be a bunch of dudes who are kind of fanboying over you or whatever. And there's equal parts men and women in there. He's amazed when he goes in and looks at how vulnerable people are, what they're sharing, how they'll come together. My community, so an organization that I have connections to, a nonprofit, they, because of all the stuff going on in Afghanistan, one of their months of funding just got allotted to Afghanistan suddenly, and they were kind of left in a lurch and needed to pay for this boat that it was already being made. And so I was like, hey fam, let's raise $10,000 and help out this organization. And I know that you're being asked to donate to Haiti and Afghanistan, but and I threw in a little bit, and they started matching themselves, and I didn't even have to go outside the community. They raised $10,000 in 2 days.
Oh my gosh.
These people are amazing. They're just, they reaffirm my faith in humanity, because often I think online we have the opposite experience. Yeah.
Man, the reaffirmation of faith in humanity, That's an important one. Like locals is really, I say this a lot too. I say this, because I have 3 supporter groups. I have YouTube, Facebook, and locals, and I'll often simulcast. I've started not doing that. I've started just kind of going to locals or Facebook, kind of alternating. And I keep trying to draw people over because they're all wonderful people. But when you come on locals, it's designed in a way to showcase humanity's best qualities. Like you said, they don't pile on each other. If someone's being a jerk, oftentimes it's recognized that maybe they're just being emotionally reactive that day. Maybe they don't quite understand. And instead of piling on, people will very politely say, well, another way to look at it too would be this way. And then if it keeps going, they'll point it out to me in the moderation. They'll say, just FYI, this person may not quite understand what's up.
Right.
And so it's really this generous, and I think there is a kind of mutual accountability. Nobody wants to be under that radar of like, oh, I'm the outlier in the tribe that's behaving in a way that isn't, sanctioned. There is a certain human social convention that happens where it's like, the worst thing that can happen to humans is to be excommunicated from a group that you really identify with. And I think there's a component of that. It can get harmful if you make that community, culty, because then you could imagine, well, you don't want to violate Grandmaster ZDogg's edicts on whatever it is. So we try to make sure we bring, like you said, the vulnerability component too, like being able to show vulnerability. It's crucial. It's a safe space to do that. Even when I do it, not just for the paying subscribers, I'll just open it to everyone on locals. I find it's really quite liberating,
Yeah. It feels, it's funny. I don't remember Facebook ever being like this. I don't, it's not like Facebook was like this and then it changed. It does feel like locals has created something. It's like they had the ability to see what all of these other platforms did well and what went wrong, and really focused on what works for creators and the empowering nature. I just feel so empowered by them, by even the fact that, for instance, something as simple as that, it's not like it's going, all of the subscribers aren't, the money isn't going to locals and then locals is paying me. But it's like my company that's attached to locals and they're paying Phetasy Inc., for example. That was empowering to me, just as an early person who's a creative, who's not always great at the business aspect of things and has really had steep learning curves in that capacity. But being able to see that made it so much more real for me. The whole idea that I was building this community and that it was something that was special, and it was also something that was a business, and it was, and people believe in what I'm doing and they want to support it. It was a hard thing for me to get my mind around.
Yeah. No, it is. It's an entrepreneurial kind of vibe, whereas Facebook, YouTube, that are taking, 30% of your supporter fees, and they're making it difficult. They don't notify supporters when you go live. There's all kinds of glitches. Either clearly they're trying to do a lot of things, right? To their credit, they do some things very well. Like YouTube is very good at video. Facebook is very good at this kind of social sharing piece. What Locals does is, we're not trying to replace Facebook or YouTube. We're taking the best aspects of the creator experience and the supporter aspect and allowing creators a space where they're like a tool, like salesforce.com or one of these other things that it empowers us to then do our thing and then just really gets out of the way, which it's great. But then when you need them, when you need support, they're right there. Right. So it's been, as a user experience, been quite remarkable. And I think that if this had existed 10 years ago, the entire social landscape would be different, because our whole monetization model of like, let's do clickbait so that we can get ad revenue, or even like a lot of sponsored stuff, like that's all great. That has its place. But the clickbait ad revenue model, where the audience is the product, it just doesn't engender anything really good in the universe beyond profits for the company. In this case, I feel like we're doing good in the world. We're doing good for ourselves. We're able to support ourselves, our family, our mission, grow what we're doing. You're able to get nonprofit money. Like, that's fantastic. Like, and it's all because they have the right technology enabling the fundamental human relationship, creating the we space, creating the space where we can be vulnerable and the connections. And they did it in record time. It's been just a few months.
I know.
Yeah.
And always improving. That's the thing that I love. They really listen to their super users, they listen to their creators, and they're highly sensitive to things that aren't working or are working. And that kind of receptiveness, I think, to creators, it's the same vibe that I have with the people in my community. I don't feel like they're this giant monolith of a corporation that I'd have to go through numerous emails and weird channels to even get to an actual human. I have a relationship with the people who are helping foster the community, and they're telling me what's working and things that I can do to improve my engagement. And even if I'm sometimes resistant.
I'm the same way. And I'm always asking them for stuff that they really shouldn't be doing. Like, I'm like, the video quality on live, if we could just get it the frame rate slightly higher, I'd be much more satisfied as a creator. They're like, nobody cares. We did a survey. They don't care about the frame rate. They care about authentically what you're saying, right?
Yeah. I did my first live stream, and it was in Nashville. And it was a horrible video of me wandering around, and it was all the woo girls. And I was shocked at how many people were watching that thing. And even after I posted it and just left it up, this is a horrible quality video.
I'd watch that. Yeah.
And it was just me commenting on the insanity if you come from California and go to Nashville, you feel like you're in a different country entirely. And it was just wild for me to be, I think it was on like South Broadway or whatever the main street is. And all the girls were out for the bachelorette party, because now it's the bachelorette capital of the world and of America. And it was just bananas. And that thing got so many views, even months after I posted it.
It's crazy, right? Yeah. I always leave my live videos up because I'm like, I stand by everything I said. Yeah, I don't care what I was doing. But yeah, and it's a way for folks to glimpse into kind of your private life a little too, which in a way brings that group a little bit closer, because they're showing you a lot of private stuff sometimes. What they're cooking. That's like an act of love, showing you what they cook. So to some degree, it's a pride thing. Like, look what I did. But it's really like, hey, come in. Like, I love to feed people. I love to make people happy. Here's how I do it. Or here's my duck, my pet duck that's in my backyard, and my kid or my dog. What's cool too is on the live streams, the audience can post pictures in the comment feed, in the chat feed. And so a lot of times I'll be going on, and I'll look over at the comment feed and be like, damn, you guys have just been talking to yourself this whole time, sending each other pictures. It's great.
Yeah, they have that's the amazing thing about live streams, or even when we do our little drop-ins welcome Zooms that we have, that I've done monthly usually, which are weirdly organized considering how many people are often in these Zooms. But there's the conversation happening, and then there's a whole conversation in the chat that's going on. And that was something that was really lost. It came back with Twitch and places like that, but it's something, again, that I think Locals has incorporated, the ability to do that kind of early AOL chat vibe that was lost in a lot of the social media platforms. It's now, we have even how you can live chat, you can tweet something, and my community loves live chat. They're like, oh my God, is this like the 90s? I think most of my audience is very Gen X, but they get so excited about it.
Me too. They still have the AOL CDs, man. Just like one day that's coming back. It's so true. Like when you open up a live chat, I was expecting like crickets. Yeah. It just goes like it's going so fast. You're like, I'm gonna step back from this for a second and just let people go crazy. But it's true. It has that connectivity vibe, that relationship vibe. What's cool too is like, I bet if we looked at each other's tribes and the vibe, we would see some interesting gender differences too, because it's always fascinating to look at that. Like, you already strike me as someone who is very relational and very connected and cares about your group like this very familial kind of way. And not to stereotype like male, female gender differences, but there are these kind of subtle things. Like, whereas sometimes I'll just go on and I'm just a jerk and I'm just ranting and raving and I'm all up in my own head. And then I watch the comments and there's all that relational stuff kind of tying it together. And I get snapped back and go, oh, this is not just about me. How about that?
I love that.
So yeah, it's just a fun social experiment on top of everything else.
Yeah, it really is just, I hope, my hope is that it somehow, as it grows, it can stay that way. As the community grows and as the company grows, is how do you maintain that? Because it is something really magical. I mean, I'm waiting for my first Phetasy family marriage. I'm waiting for people. That will be when I'm like, yes, when two people meet in the community and end up getting married. And we've had people, they're up in the Pacific Northwest, and one woman is a beekeeper and the other woman wanted to get into it. And now they have barbecues and she brought her bees, and it's just so... It's so true what you said. It is the early promise of the internet.
Dude, I have so many beekeepers in my audience. What's the deal with that? Like, there's something, like they just walk, you just see them with that ET hazmat suit with the smoke and all that. I'm like, who are these people? I want to do this. That's really cool.
I feel like there's that one movie about how bees are going to like save the world or something on Netflix, and then everybody became a beekeeper, but good. We do need them.
We need them, man. This is how much percentage of our food supply is pollinated by bees. Dude, I mean, you could replace them with hornets. We could have a world where hornets, that would not be nice. Man, that's awesome. So it's been great. It really has. And it's great to connect with other creators like yourself who would, we're not in each other's spheres, right?
Right.
But now we are. So how cool is that? Like, I've learned so much just talking to you here on the thing about how to even think about this kind of space and ideas on how to better use it.
Well, I've learned a lot too. I'm going to start ranting. I'm going to go in and be like, did you see what they said to me on Twitter?
It's cathartic. It's tea kettling, And you know what? The best thing to do is to share. So sometimes I'll get these like crazy emails that are just hate email. You get them all the time. But they'll be especially bad. You're just like, wow, this is not, it's a death threat combined with the N word. I'm like, last time I checked, wow. I was like, oh, wow, what race do you think I am? You're using an epithet that isn't even the appropriate epithet, and on and on and on. And I'll copy it and I'll put it in a thing. And I'm like, guys, let's talk about this. And just go off and make jokes and kind of blow off steam, because, deep down, you're kind of like, this is a little scary and a little uncomfortable. But if you put it out there, suddenly you have this family that's like, oh yeah, let's tear this apart.
It's weird too, I think, because it does sound like we're similar, in the sense that I've always said my tribe is tribeless, but which is a bit of an paradox. But I have found my tribe of tribeless people, and they're kind of all over, and it's interesting in the community to see. We'll have, socialists to anarchists to people who are really far right. It is wild. And I am shocked at how respectful they are and gentle with one another.
They're so kind to each other. Like, people who by any other social media platform would be stabbing each other virtually. If there was a stab, emoji, it would just be everywhere. Instead, they're like, oh man, I can see why, this or that, but here's my take. It's glorious. We actually coined, so the ethos of our tribe is what I call alt middle.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not saying you're a centrist. It's saying radical acceptance of different ideas and assuming good intent, and then using science and rational discourse to connect the emotional self with that and come up with a search for truth. That's really all it is. So it means that you treat everything with respect, but some truths for you may be more true than others. So it's not a milquetoast thing. It's not I'm a moderate centrist. It can mean that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. So that then creates a vibe that then people go, okay, it wasn't really alt middle to come out and just like share this political piece of thing and just assume the other side is idiots and so on,
Right. I love that. Wow. We do have a lot in common. Well, yeah, I'll probably join your group.
And likewise, although I have a feeling that if you saw any of my cooking, you would kick me out of the group.
No, I doubt it. I doubt it. There are people who post. The other thing I love is that it's very just, humor is a big part of my whole entire ethos in life. Is just, if you can't, laugh at yourself and laugh at the absurdity of life, then you're in trouble. And that definitely is, you'll be scrolling through and there will be someone posting a really heartfelt post about their dog passing away, and then, memes. Just like, but just down, and it's the whole human experience. It's just so beautiful like that.
One of the most amazing videos I've seen is a couple of spiritually enlightened teachers on YouTube. They're kind of well-known, non-dual spirituality. They're talking to each other and they're all serious and, well, the nature of consciousness and and then they look at each other for a second and they both start uncontrollably laughing, and they laugh straight for 5 minutes. Every time they look at each other, they start laughing. And that's the nature of reality. It is absurd. Yeah. It's hilarious. It's the universe is a joke on itself, and there's no punchline and no setup. It's a paradox. So yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me and taking the time to talk about your community and your experience with locals. This has been very informative for me, and I hope that it continues to grow, and that, we should definitely podcast and do crossover events and introduce our communities to one another.
I love it. I think there's tons of people in my community that would love your dumpster fire, man. They would jump right in. They would jump right in. It's such a joy. Thank you again. So wonderful to connect.
Thank you.